Hello, all. Garland Nixon here with Scott Ritter and Andrei Martyanov. All kinds of stuff going on that we need to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland and Scott and Andre here. We got plenty to talk about, but first, make sure you go to keep up with these two guys, scottritter.com. That's all Scott's great information. All of his great work is there, and of course, his project, his latest project, which is a Russia House project, which is on his Telegram channel. So make sure you look into the Russia House project and become a part of that. Andre, Reminiscence of the Future, and of course the Smoothie X12, which is an absolutely fantastic YouTube channel. I never miss anything on it. So make sure that you check these guys out all the time and follow me on Telegram and particularly Rumble, because the last show we did, the next morning we got up and YouTube canned our show. I still don't know why, but whatever. We must be doing something right. All right, so let's go, guys. Let's start here. Scott, let's start with you. I did put that Trump is stumbling, right? Because it seems to me, okay, look, I didn't expect him to get anything done and overnight or who knows if ever. But when I look at his foreign policy, right, he's threatening Iran. You better do this within 2 months or you're going to get it. He's got the whole thing going on with Yemen. Yeah, we'll bomb the people in Yemen. And I'm like, they really ain't going to stop. Do you understand how Ansar Allah thinks? There's not going to stop. It seems like he's stumbling pretty bad right now. Your thoughts on that, Scott?
Well, here I go. I'm going to piss everybody off, but I don't care anymore. Peace through strength. Again, this, what I'm about to do is explain what I believe is going through Trump's mind. This isn't how I would approach this issue, but everybody, of course, is going to accuse me of bending over and kissing Trump's butt and all that stuff. Stick it in your ear. This is like trying to read tea leaves out of a coffee cup. It's tough, but peace through strength means just that. It means that there has to be the impression of strength. To me, the ultimate benchmark of conflict resolution in the Middle East is not Gaza. I know all the pro-Palestinian people out there are doing backflips about Gaza. And if you've been watching me, you know where my heart is on this issue. And you know how it bleeds for what's happening to the Palestinian people. But I have said over and over and over again that a war with Iran, nobody will ever mention Gaza again because it just won't matter. That's how insignificant Gaza is on the geopolitical spectrum. And I'm sure that statement just pissed a lot of people off too.
Oh yeah, it did. It's real politics. I mean, it's not. This is real politics we're talking.
So now Trump is in a position where and I believe rightfully so, I've written about this. I believe that Iran is on the cusp of nuclear weapons capability. I believe that the only thing that prevents Iran from having a nuclear weapon is the political decision made by the Iranian leadership, the supreme leader, backed up by a fatwa, a religious edict that declares, nuclear weapons to be, I think the term is haram, forbidden. But again, I follow this issue very closely, both from the technical aspect of what it takes to build a nuclear weapon, but also the political aspect. And this past spring through the summer, we've had a succession of senior Iranian officials linked to its nuclear program make statements that said, we've reached the ability. All we need is a political decision. And then we've had people say that people who, for instance, Jalili, who could have been president, by the way, just a couple votes away from being president. Former lead nuclear negotiator. He knows a thing or two about the Iranian nuclear program, and a member of the Expediency Council, that is Expediency Discernment Council, one of the elite councils that provide advice in an advisory capacity to the supreme leader. He said that if situations change in the Middle East, where Iran now faces an existential threat from nations possessing nuclear weapons, that the circumstances which were in existence when the fatwa prohibiting nuclear weapons, if those change, then the fatwa can be changed itself. Now, this tells me when you have somebody at the Expediency Discernment Council, a senior authority who advises, it means that this has been discussed in the innermost circles of the Iranian leadership, meaning the Iranian leadership has said, what does it take for us to undo this fatwa? And they have already reached it. So what they need are circumstances to change for them to have nuclear weapons. But then you have people saying that once that decision's been made, they are literally days away from having a nuclear weapons capability. That implies that they have resolved weaponization, meaning that they have missiles identified, they have warhead designs identified. All they need to do, they have the warhead built, meaning the explosive charge and the capacitator, everything. All they need is a fissile material, which is sitting there in a whole bunch of uranium hexafluoride enriched to 60%. That could be enriched to 98% in a blink of an eye, because Iran has installed the new IR-6 and IR-8 super centrifuges in the Firdos plant. And these are configured to rapidly convert 60% up to the 98%. And then we know Iran has solved the uranium metallurgy problem, meaning how do you convert enriched uranium hexafluoride into a metal? Why do we know that? Because the plates that are used for the fuel for the Tehran research reactor are uranium metal plates. So that we know they can do that. They have the capacity to do that. So we know they can make uranium metal. Now it's just a matter, if it's a gun design, it's basically physics, simple stuff. The mass that you need to go fissile, pull out a slug, build a gun design. My arms aren't here, but you're gonna boom, fire that into here, and bam. If you go and take a look at the fat man and the little boy, I believe that I could be wrong. Somebody correct me here. It's a 50-50 shot. I'm going. Little boy was the plutonium bomb. That's my guess. The fat man was the uranium bomb. One of them tested at Alamogordo, the plutonium bomb. Why? Complicated. You have to get the whole thing compressed down at all coming in at once. Boom. So they tested it. The uranium bomb never tested, just dropped. Why? Because they knew it was going to work. So the idea that Iran would have to go out and test this, you don't. It's physics. If you have uranium metal enriched to a certain level, you have the ability to make a nuclear bomb. It's as easy as that. So when I hear all this, and I've written about this, I've said that Iran is literally days or weeks away from having a functioning, deliverable nuclear weapon. I think that the CIA happens to concur with me on this one. And I think that Trump has been briefed on this. And Trump has said that's unacceptable, because Israel's saying that's unacceptable. And so rather than let Israel drag us into a war on Israel's timing, Trump has said, I'm taking the bull by the horns. And I'm going straight to the source, and I'm telling them, we're done. We're not messing around anymore. No more. Let's pretend we're JCPOA. Oh, Trump, you're a bad boy. You pulled out. Trump doesn't care. Trump is saying, we're done. 2 weeks or I blow you off the face of the earth. That's it. Now, I just don't want to remind people why I say that. Because when Trump was president last time, he talked about hitting Iran's nuclear program. And the targeteers, the smart people, went, hey, boss, can't take them out with conventional weapons. The Firdos plants, underground, mountain, the whole thing. Natanz has a new thing. We come in with conventional weapons. We're just nothing's going to happen. Got to go nuke. And so Trump redid the nuclear posture and the nuclear employment plans to bring in a new category of weapons, low yield nuclear weapons. The W76-2, it goes on a Trident missile, and it is very accurate, low yield, high penetration capacity. It will penetrate these things. Boom. We have redesigned the B-61 gravity bomb. I forget which one it is, either B-61-12 or B-61-13, somewhere there. It is a dial-up weapon. Again, thicker nose, designed to penetrate before blowing up. We have built these weapons, and we have these weapons deployed. These weapons will be used to take out Iran's nuclear weapons potential. That's just the way it is. You can't do it with conventional weapons. So when Trump says, I'm going to bomb you, he's saying, I'm nuking you. And I've been saying this over and over to all my Iranian friends, because I do consider the Iranian people to be my friends. He's serious. So you have to decide, do you want to live or die? Because it's what it comes down to. You're about to have a nuclear war with the United States of America, and you're going to lose. You can't win. Now, you might do some damage here, there, and you might get us in the long term by making oil very expensive and all that stuff. But, we have strategies too. We're not, this is Trump. Some people think he's stupid. He's not. We have energy self-sufficiency. There are ways to decouple ourselves from the global spot market, speculation market, so that we can control the price of energy for the American people. We don't want to do that because that's delinking from the global economy, but we're not going to let Iran crash our market. I'm just telling the Iranians that if you think you're going to destroy the rest of the world, and that's America's fault. But we have been planning this attack for a very long time. And when it's executed, it will be executed violently and quickly and decisively, and Iran will be destroyed. It will take out the nuclear sites. It will take out leadership. It will take out everything it needs to take out. It'll be a comprehensive nation melting exercise. I'm not saying I want it. In fact, I'm dead set against it. I'm just telling you the way it is. This is why Trump is now, when was the last time a president went to Congress beforehand and said, hey, I need permission? Why does he need permission? He doesn't need permission to bomb Iran. He fought it last time. You remember last time the Democratic-controlled Congress, Senate tried to pass a resolution that tied Trump's hand when it came to Iran. They actually passed it because they were concerned he's going to go. He vetoed it, and the Senate couldn't overcome the veto. But back then they were struggling. Now Trump is flipping the tables. He's going to them. Why do you think he's doing that? Because this is going to be a different kind of strike. This is going to be a nation-killing strike. And this is very dangerous because we don't know how the rest of the world's going to operate. This will be the first time since Hiroshima and Nagasaki that somebody's used nuclear weapons. It's consistent with our doctrine. I've been telling everybody this, who, all the people, Scott, you're crying wolf, Scott. You're trying to scare us. You better be scared, because the American doctrine allows for the preemptive use of nuclear weapons in non-nuclear environments. But this is a nuclear environment. All right. And we are going to use preemptive self-defense to take. And now here's the other thing that's going to piss everybody off. Iran ain't allowed to have this stuff. Okay, they're not allowed to have nuclear weapons capability. And when the Iranians themselves admit they're on the cusp of it, there's a problem. So as much as I condemn the Trump administration, Iran is to blame here as well. They are to blame. They've been playing a game. Now, I don't blame them for the game. It's a very difficult situation they're in, but they have been playing a cute game of relying upon the law that allows them to withdraw from the JCPO because Europe wasn't complying with its obligation to open up its markets and all that, blah, 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 blah. Bam, 5 days from a nuclear weapon. Guess what, Iran? I'm not happy about it either. You know who else isn't happy about it? Russia. You know who else isn't happy about it? China. No one in the world supports Iran on this one. No one that counts. So now, let's get down to what I think is happening here. I don't think Trump wants to nuke Iran. I think Trump understands that this will blow up the economy and mess up his plan.
It'll end his presidency 4 weeks in. It'll end his 12 weeks. It'll end his presidency.
But here's the thing. If you remember when he first put out that letter, the supreme leader, this letter is crap. You cannot insult me. I am the supreme leader of Iran. I refuse to be insulted by this. We will never yield to your threats. Da, 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 da. Today, the Iranians are going, yeah, we still don't like the letter, but we're looking at how to begin negotiations to get out of this. And now you know the genius, the mad genius of Donald Trump. because they know he's serious. They know he's going to pull the trigger. They know it's all over. So they're beginning to do that which they said they would never do, which is to reach out to the Russians and reach out to the Chinese and say, how the hell do we stop this nonsense? And the Russians are ready. I remind everybody, the Russians signed a strategic framework agreement with Iran that said, we're going to build nuclear power plants in there. If you've been studying the Iran nuclear program, they've been saying, they have Bushehr, and originally their nuclear enrichment was to make fuel for that, which they have done. But they said, because the scope and scale of it's bigger than the Bushehr reactor alone, they said, we're going to be building new reactors all over the place. Can't do it. So now you have a situation where they're not able to build these reactors, but they have this enrichment capacity that's far greater than what they need for Bushehr, which tells everybody that's a nuclear weapons program. It's not, but why do you need this much? And the answer is Iran doesn't need any of it. So if Russia is able to build the nuclear reactors, and the United States agrees with this, and there's a treaty framework, because we're not talking about the JCPOA anymore. We are talking about a treaty, a binding treaty that's going to lock Iran in. And Russia is going to be the guarantor. Russia will build the nuclear reactors and provide the fuel, and Iran will be able to negotiate away the vast majority of the nuclear enrichment program that has Israel and the United States so concerned. That's the direction I think we're going, and that's the outcome I pray we get. Because if we don't, it's going to be very bad.
Your thoughts on this, Andrei?
No, I agree with Scott, and especially in terms of the nuclear program. And again, we view Iran as a cohesive, coherent, government, coherent nation. No, it's if you look at Tehran, for example, highly westernized. There are all kinds of the people, including the high places, who are in many respects are pro-Western, and you would call them, progressive, reformers or what have you, So that it doesn't mean that they are good or bad. It just means that it is there and they cannot ignore it, So I, in large extent, to a large extent, I agree with Scott. The only thing, of course, we have to consider the fact that if, God forbids, it goes there, United States will be completely isolated in the world. And this is going to be bad. And despite the fact that the United States indeed does have the resources and wherewithal to survive it and, maintain itself at some level. But yeah, the situation will change so dramatically that, I cannot even describe. So, and I agree with him as much as my heart also, I've been on record openly with Gaza and what is being done there. So on the larger scheme of things of what is happening right now, obviously this is it's important, but it's not as significant, despite the fact that we're obviously talking about the ethnic cleansing which is happening there. But again, it all also proceeds from the fact that it all depends how you view Israel as state as such. Do you either, it's very many-hand, it's very black and white, it's Boolean, it's 1-0, yes, no. Do you agree on the existence of the Israel as a state, or you don't? Period. So that there is no middle ground. I mean, the rest of it is just basically tactical details, and this is where we all came down to today. And Gaza, of course, it's a stain. That's what we know what they did to Danny Davis, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. It's obviously that Tulsi offered, the position of the deputy for the intelligence operations integration. And of course, ADL and AIPAC did all they could to basically sabotage the men of honor and, and good professional and with a good understanding of the issues. And so when you look at this, it's just like, good Lord, it's such a mess. So, but yeah, I totally agree with Scott that nobody wants to get this goal, this direction. And yes, Russia is very much interested in Iran, probably having a decent armed forces. It does. And Russia will rearm it in a sense that it will provide what Iran cannot produce itself, which is, of course, combat aviation, for example, additional probably ISR means and things of this nature. But Russia is also not interested in the nuclear armed Iran, in its southern belly, so to speak. Russia is interested in doing business, and whatever is happening. I was surprised, however, yesterday, Zakharova stated, obviously on behalf of the foreign ministry, that yeah, this upcoming Riyadh meeting of the expert groups between the United States and Russia, there will be no representatives of the foreign ministry. There will be, however, the advisor of the FSB, of the director of FSB there. And we can only speculate. I posted very simple, just reposted this info and said, make out of it whatever you want. We can speculate until the hell freezes over, But the point is the fact that a foreign ministry is not there, but FSB is in some capacity. Man, there's a lot of which could be, tied to it. And we can only, as already stated, speculate about it, because Trump suddenly finds himself in uncharted territory we remember 24 hours, then couple of weeks, then 100 days. A special military operation is not stopping. It's not until all military and political objectives are reached and achieved, and this is what is happening. I looked just before we went online. My gosh, Ukraine is burning, So okay, and listen, I spoke about it so many times. Russians are not complete idiots, okay? They anticipated the Zelensky regime will break the so-called energy truce, whatever. Guess what? In less than 24 hours, they attacked their, accumulation facility, which is, by the way, owned partially by Chevron and Mobil. It's like, okay, now you see, there you go. This is how you do it. And when you have the enemy who is predictable, and especially London, which is livid. I look at what is happening in British, not only media, their political and military, whatever is available, obviously in the open. I don't have any, intel sources there or something like that. I just read press, and this is insanity. It's, my God, it's a psychiatry level type events, and I think so. They are absolutely livid, and so are Europeans. They are in some kind of combination of panic and desperation. And I never saw anything like this. And I am I'm Cold Warrior 1.0, okay? I've seen it all. And I knew some things there in Cold War, which even today require, I can talk about it, but even today require some real serious, clearance. But at that time it was Form 1A, and you'll read it, it's like, oh, good Lord. Well, now I look at what is happening in Europe, and especially the Trump administration, because it is absolutely in the bind here completely. He talked it up so much. This is typical Trump, actually. He talked it up so much from the get-go that he didn't understand the consequences that, and with all deep respect to Iranian people, Russia is not Iran, And so he suddenly, and one of the reasons why he was suddenly dropping these truth bombs about that, Putin has all cards and, on his hand and things of this nature, that I believe that it has everything to do with Tulsi, because I remember just recently she was on Fox and talking about that people from, intelligence community come to me, she said, and they're saying, look in this part. Here's where the sabotage is. Here where they misinform and disinform, and things like that. And suddenly Trump begins to get the real number and the real situation on the ground, which he didn't before. When you look at actually how this whole system based on the DNC Goebbelsian propaganda was built around Blinken and what's his name? Sullivan. Yeah, Biden was just avatar. He was completely, incapacitated, and then suddenly you have this break, and you have the numbers, you have the real situation. Probably somebody comes and says, "Here are the real maps." You know what is funny? Before I went here, 10 minutes before we went on air, Institute for the Study of War I mean, Institute for the Unlearning the War, for those great, great strategic minds, Petraeus, Keen, all those, oh yeah, man, you know how to fight war. They suddenly break this. It's unbelievable because they say that Kursk operation is the most inefficient operation in the history of warfare of the last 200 years. Hey, guys, you planned it. You planned it. You don't understand what you're getting yourself into. You didn't understand what you went. They were the guys who 2 weeks ago even were still praising it as the greatest, strategic achievement. They killed their freaking combined arms army. 69,000 killed for today. 350 main battle tanks. Thousands of the APCs, all those Bradleys, all those BTRs, what have you. I mean, it's just catastrophe. That for people who do not understand what they are dealing with here, let me explain. The wedge from the get-go, which they, were able to do on August 6th of 2024, the maximum area which they covered was 159 square miles. Do you know what it is? It's about half the size of the New York City with boroughs. This is as far as they went. Now imagine, get Manhattan, cut New York approximately in half, okay? And this is their basically piece of ground where they killed 70,000 people. It's littered with the corpses, tanks, burnt tanks, APC, it's just unbelievable. And the question is now, who did this? Well, I can tell you, I have news for you. It wasn't in Kiev. It was in Ramstein. They did it in Ramstein. They were sitting there playing their games, having all those, they have SWIFT. Has nothing to do with the banking operations. The SWIFT is the war gaming software. It is highly classified. You can just know about it, And evidently, the inputs they were getting into, to get this model working and like, oh yeah, we have this probability of things, let's go, Evidently, as all this, it was what? Garbage in, garbage out. They ran that people, this basically cannon fodder in tens of thousands. And instead of as I already stated, the only thing they managed to do is this wedge, the size of the half of the New York City. And they all died there. When history books they are already being written, this is unbelievable. And guess what? I'm pretty sure Academy in Sandhurst and the King's College and the School of the Joint Warfare, Command Staff College in London, I don't know how they're going to be teaching it. You know why? Because these are the morons who did it, and they had no responsibility for granted, the atrocity which they committed were so, it's unbelievable what kind of atrocities have been committed there against Russian people and civilians, and prisoners of war. And I don't think so they will recover ever from this because we live in the world which is 21st century. Everybody has internet and the information has pretty much, goes around freely. And so this is the result. And Trump right now, he should understand. He cannot extricate the United States from what is happening. He just can't. It's not just about military-industrial complex and making money and profits. Albeit, it's part of it. Everything is back. The ISR being fed to whatever remains of fifth iteration? I already lost count. Fifth iteration of the armed forces of Ukraine. And they feed that whatever is available right now. They're probably touching already untouchable stocks of the ammunition and equipment in the United States from the U.S. armed forces. And today, the first confirmation of the mass employment drafting of the 18-year-olds on the part of Ukraine, the even visual confirmations. So this tells you everything you need to know. Russians killed, Doug McGregor says it, he said it months ago, it was already 1.2 killed. That's his contacts in Pentagon. Well, CIA says pretty much same. What are we going to have by the end of the active phase? 1.5 million killed. How many millions we're going to have? The real size of population of Ukraine today is about 18 million. Nobody knows really. And if that hasn't been enough, I can tell you one thing. stunning executive order by Putin today about the presence of the Ukrainian population on the territory of the of Russian Federation. It's I cannot emphasize enough what it means. It is huge, and guess what? Many Russians who majority of Russians do not consider Ukrainians to be brotherly people anymore. So, and they applaud that, and he spoke 2 days ago. You can look it up, video on the, it's called Collegium of the Prosecutor General and Investigative Committee. Mr. Bastrykin was there, and he reiterated this, and I quote, all forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, including, of course, armed forces of Ukraine, are considered to be considered terrorists. And you know how Russians deal with the terrorists. In the Kursk, there you go. And Mr. Trump didn't expect that.
Scott, I for a while in the beginning, I thought, okay, I think they're going to get a deal or whatever. I feel like it's much less likely at this point. The Russians are winning. They have no reason to get a deal. I think the Trump people want a deal, but they don't know how to get one. And the equivalent of a deal for the U.S. empire would mean this. They've taken a massive defeat, and they have to somehow get a deal that spins that into something other than a massive defeat. I could be wrong. It could happen. But your thoughts on where we are right now. One other thing I will say to you, Scott, and it's kind of down the line of what Andrei was saying. I also feel that the MI6s and the French intelligence of the world are horrified that this thing will end, because they're afraid that people will start telling some of the things that happened, some of the things that they've done. That they're horrified that people will come out from Kiev and say, well, we only did this because they told us that. Well, and that the things that will come out that came from MI6, came from some of these Western states, will be shocking to the conscience of the people, even in their own states. Anyway, your thoughts on all of that, Scott?
Before I go, Scott, there are people on my Telegram channel begged me to say hello from Izhevsk and Watkins. Okay. So there you go. I did my part. So,
well, thank you very much, and please send them my fondest regards. Votkinsk, of course, was where the Votkins machine building plant is. The Votkins factory where I was.
Those people go to my. I need to add you to my TG channel. You will see people saying hello to Votkins.
Izhevsk was the big city. We landed in the Izhevsk airport, and we would often go to Izhevsk. I had the pleasure and honor of meeting Mr. Kalashnikov himself at the Kalashnikov factory.
Wow!
And then just seeing, I mean, I make no bones about it. I have nothing but great memories. I love Russia. It's in my heart. I'm an American. Don't get me wrong, but whenever you mention Votkinsk and Izhevsk, a smile just comes on my face because I had such a great time. It was such an important time in my life. So yeah, thank you. Now, again, I'm going to probably end up pissing a lot of people off.
That's what we're here for, man. If you haven't pissed anybody else, then what are we even doing here? What are we even accomplishing?
I take a different tack. I believe there will be a deal, and I think the deal will happen sooner rather than later. And the reason is this: the Russians are strategic thinkers. Now, the Russians are going to get almost everything they want from this deal. I say almost because there's always little negotiation. Look,
yeah, there will be. Yeah.
If you saw, the Russians have always been hard, fast. Denazification, demilitarization, Ukrainian neutrality. Go take a look at the Istanbul communique. Russia did not. I mean, that is not a surrender document. Russia bent over backwards to be accommodating to Ukraine and Ukrainian sensibilities. And Putin made it clear in June of last year when he said that's still on the table, updated to reflect present reality.
Right.
But my point is this: the Russians have always been willing to negotiate, to accommodate where they can accommodate, as long as the framework of what they want, the intent of what they want. They want the final, deal. How they get there and how's it they're willing to play games, and they're willing to do things as well. I don't know the specifics of the Istanbul communique, but there was even something when, first of all, Russia wasn't going to get all of the Donbass. I mean, they were talking about getting the parts that they controlled. They were going to give up Kherson and Zaporizhia. And Crimea, which is Russian, they were willing to do things such as bring the Ukrainians in to advise about the culture and all that. I mean, they just bent over backwards to be accommodating to Ukrainians. So when people say that the Russians are unwilling to compromise, I say Russia does nothing but compromise as long as the strategic objective is met. Strategically, Russia, I think, is looking at the potential of having good relations with the United States and all that entails, because there's so much spinoff. That is the big picture. That's bigger than, nailing Zelensky to the cross. And that's why I think Russia realizes that there's a window of opportunity here that will not exist indefinitely, that they need to engage the United States constructively across the broad spectrum of things. My understanding is the reason why the FSB guy is on this negotiating team is that they're going to nail down a Black Sea agreement.
Yeah,
and
they will be talking about. Yeah. That will.
I don't think they're just going to talk about it. I think they're coming out with a deal, saying this is the deal for the Black Sea. And I think the FSB guy is there to talk about Russia's legitimate concerns about how Ukraine has disguised grain shipments to hide weapons. He's going to brief the United States on the intelligence and say, we're all for this, but there has to be a monitoring mechanism in place that protects our interests. We can't just let the ships come moving in and out unless there's some inspections, and the previous ones were insufficient. You, the United States, now have to step up to the plate and provide something. And here's the other thing too. Trump doesn't view this as a loss. Trump didn't lose.
Right.
Biden lost. That's Trump's way. Now we can spin it anyway. We can attack that. We can, in Trump world, which is the only world that matters, he's bringing peace. It's not a loss of face for him to say Biden got us in this situation. I mean, he's always said there would never have been a war if I had been president. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter. In Trump world, that absolves him of all sin. He is without sin. He would not have allowed this war to happen. Everything that happened is Biden's fault, and now Trump's coming in to clean up the mess. So I don't think there's any obstacles in the way of a deal in terms of saying, oh, this looks bad for America. From Trump's perspective, the only thing that looks bad for America is failing to get a deal. And he is going to be working very hard. And the words coming out from the Russians, I mean, I have never seen the Russians this understanding of American domestic political reality. They are giving Trump every benefit of the doubt you can possibly give an American president, especially given the history, because they recognize that this is a unique moment. Garland, you were at the Russian embassy during the victory, and you saw how the you couldn't get them to say anything bad about Trump or America today. And even when they spoke about the past, the Russians were just like, no, we don't want to say anything that pisses you guys off. We're all here. We're going to work. They didn't yield. They didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. But the Russians are being as accommodating as possible to the complexity of the American situation. They understand that we are juggling a lot of balls. They know that we have a political problem because everybody in Congress voted for Ukrainian aid. Everybody in Congress voted. Trump is going alone on this one. He is flying solo. This is Han Solo, baby. He's going all by himself. And Congress ain't there to back him up. And so he needs to be careful on how he deals with Zelensky. I think they've acknowledged, and I think the last time, this was an ambush. What he did to Zelensky in the White House was straight up ambush, done on purpose to bring Zelensky down a couple notches to help push things forward. But he irritated a lot of members of Congress doing that. NATO is an issue. He can't just say, screw you, NATO, I'm out of here. He has to play games. Europe, he has to receive the phone calls. He has to go through the motions. So the Russians are like, we got to give him a little bit of latitude to fix these issues, to do this, knowing though at the end of the day, Trump, I mean, Medvedev said it best. There's only two people at the table, and the menu, is chicken cut, Kiev cutlets, the entree. We got some frog legs. We got some British this. But the point is, there's only two people at the table, and everybody knows that. But politically, Trump can't just make that happen. He has to do this other stuff, massage it. And the Russians are giving him plenty of room. But I think you're going to see, because there's only so many times you can have a meeting where you come out of the meeting and go, well, that was a good meeting, and we look forward to the next one. There's only so many times, and I think we might have reached the limit of that. There has to be something substantive coming out of this meeting, and I believe it's going to be a Black Sea agreement that's going to nail down and show, because the whole concept of the Black Sea agreement is to show that Russia can do things that that are beneficial to Ukraine, but that the United States can impose security mechanisms and confidence building mechanisms and monitoring mechanisms that both sides are happy with. This is a nice test vehicle. And then you'll proceed in stages. You'll do this, then there'll be the next thing, and then there'll be the next thing. And on top of all this, Europe's just out there committing suicide. They 800 billion, they can't afford that. They know that. They're talking this. Their language is getting ahead of themselves. But at the end of the day, the Europeans are going to have to do what Trump, because no matter what they say, I mean, you got the British, we're going to send the orders out to the special forces to begin training in preparation for potential deployment to Ukraine. And everybody's like, oh, the British are going in. No, they're not. Because every time the British speak, they always finish it with, we're so tough, we're so bad, we're so this. But America has to backstop us. The French, oh, we are French, we are going to do this, but America must backstop. America's not backstopping anything, guys. We aren't going to do it. And that's the ultimate thing. So in the end of the day, if we can move, see, the Europeans they're pushing hard because they're betting that we can't move this thing forward, that we have stalled, that this war will go on forever, and therefore they'll be positioned to step in when America exhausts itself, as we often do. That's why Trump has to move quicker, because America's like the proverbial, I mean, was it a kitten? You can't hold a kitten's attention, and start wandering. Trump has to move. He has to keep moving, and progress has to be made. Europe is doing what they're doing because they're continuing what they started before the election. Remember, I just want to remind everybody, Europe sided with Biden-Harris. Europe voted. Europe said, we want them to win. And then after they lost and Trump won, Europe worked with Biden to undermine Trump. Europe is not on Team Trump. And Europe is saying, we had this problem in 2016, and all we had to do was wait it out. And Trump went away, and our boys came back. The establishment came back. And that's the other European thing, is they are building something that can ride them through the 4 years of Trump, hoping that Trump collapses, fails, loses attention, gets distracted with Iran, all this kind of stuff. And that Iran thing's a big deal. If you don't have a Black Sea agreement nailed down before there's an Iranian crisis, Trump, he can't chew gum and walk at the same time. I don't believe he's got to nail something down. So I believe that there's going to be a deal sooner rather than later. And the first tell for this deal will be a Black Sea agreement that's going to emerge from the next meeting in Riyadh. If there isn't a deal, then we're in trouble.
Well, not necessarily in trouble, but sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrei. I just wanted to say,
trouble. It's an expert group, and things of this nature. They sometimes, it takes time even to nail the simpler agreements than what we have right now. There are so many also sentiments attached to all that, and do not forget, Trump has one advantage, which was this stunning poll, really, when 34% of Americans, which is like a very large minority, okay, more than a third essentially saying, oh yeah, Russians are our friends and things like that. It's just like, whoa. Europeans, they're a different game. They hate Russia. Majority of population of European countries, they just cannot stand Russians, especially old Europe, both Catholic and Protestant, and especially Germans. Anybody who thinks that Germans somehow, they never recovered from the defeat. They never did it. It's clear as the day, So, and but in this respect, so I wouldn't put too much faith in that, necessarily they have to come out and say, okay, we have this Black Sea Agreement. It might take another meeting, on the in Riyadh or wherever. Yeah, this time it's in Riyadh, I think. So they will be talking, and it's good in itself. But there is another factor for Europeans which terrifies them. Apart, that is why they panic. There is such guy called Vice President J.D. Vance. And he's incumbent now, essentially, incumbent vice president. And the guy already showed his colors really well. And let me tell you, he is the guy who was openly not insulting. He was telling the truth, basically, to Europeans who they are. They are totalitarian, their sect, their cult, and that's who they are. They will die out. Europe will die out. They will die out demographically. Economically, they are pathetic. Militarily, I'm not even going there. It's just a joke, I made the video recently saying, yeah, how about early warning system? Let's check whose early warning system works for you. Yeah, this American thing called SBIRS. Yeah, those 500 satellites there.
Yeah, but they're pretty good on broomsticks. They got some pretty. They got a lot of broomsticks.
They are only SMPT, the air defense complex. Well, as much as American air defense and wasn't that effective. But let me put it this way. They are nowhere near even in vicinity of the American, for example, ABM capabilities, such as GBI, for example. If Europe will begin to build it, it will have their bottom falling off. And so you begin to count those things. And yeah, you have, for example, British strategic missile submarines basically going to their combat patrol. You know what? Out of 16 cells, they have usually 2 to 4 cells with actual missiles. And guess who those missiles, whose those missiles are? They are American ones, Trident 2 G5. So you look at this like French, why don't they say it Leclerc? And Rafale to Ukraine. See what's going to happen. Of course they will not, because they know what's going to happen. It's and when you look at this, they are terrified. They work. It's for we can say whatever we want about NATO, and but the truth is, it's like I showed the video to my in my blog, and it's like in 44 video of the Russian, American and British POWs being assaulted by Parisians on the streets when they were paraded as POWs by Germans. They were spitting on them. They were screaming at them. They were hitting them. I mean, is it history? Of course it is history. It's documented, and this, so that's who they are, really. Many people don't understand. And you begin to tell them facts about that. Militarily, you are chihuahuas. You're nobody, literally. Remove their nuclear, which is basically named after de Gaulle. It was de Gaulle who created the nuclear deterrent of France. Remove it. What you have left? Some overpriced champagne, croissants and the Montmartre and Leclerc tanks, which probably will move a freaking mile without sinking, in the real combat conditions. And then they will be, just killed. Doesn't matter what they do. So that's what you have. And you do not have people. You do not have personnel. You do not have fighting doctrine, which is unified. You literally have nothing. And that is why they are panicking, because obviously we heard what Mr. J.D. Vance stated. Forget Trump. Although Bannon says what? Trump gonna run in 2028. Man, then he better deliver on something, So, but J.D. Vance, I think so. He is an even bigger threat to Europe, because he was absolutely genuine. I could see it when he was saying things to Europeans about who they are and what they did to their continent. And that terrifies them, because they got used to live on 2 things. Okay, let's face it. It was the U.S. military expenditure, which allegedly was, and of course it was Soviet and then Russian cheap energy. This is how the prosperity of Europe came about since 1970s. This is what it was from the get-go. Even Borrell, this alcoholic, he admitted that, we lived that well because of the Soviet energy. Yeah. And because they didn't spend much on, it was the United States which was carrying this. Well, let's say, I wouldn't say that Soviet Union wanted to attack. I know it because I served them. But I mean, theoretically, yeah, for the public and for political elites, it was the United States which was carrying the burden of the defense expenditure and, technology and everything. So, and when you look at this is, we have this, what Scott correctly stated, strategic deal. And yeah, there are only two players in this particular case, United States and Russia. They are superpowers. They have to find modus vivendi. Europe, it can go to hell. United States will use it to shove down their throats American weapons. It's already happening. And, United States, well, it cannot afford it. But F-35s, they will sell F-35s, all right? Believe me, it's out there in the open. Because Germany had its hands twisted already. They wanted to go with the Eurofighter. Well, guess what? They are buying now F-35s. So,
Scott, before we go, your thoughts on Europe in that, the irrationality of, we want to stand up, we want to keep this fight going, we want to do this. People who have nothing, they got no weapons to send, they got no money. Literally, they're like, well, we don't have any money. Well, the Russians have a pot of money, but maybe the only people on the continent that actually have money is the Russians. And because they're holding a pot of the Russians' money, they're like, maybe we can take it from the Russians. Well, they can't do that because apparently MBS in Saudi Arabia says, you touch that money, I'm taking my trillions of dollars out. So they're kind of stuck there, although I'm sure they're pilfering some. But your thoughts on, here's something I've thought for a while. For all of their blabbering, at some point, if a deal's made, let's just say for the sake of an argument that a deal's made, and Trump starts saying, or the U.S. says, look, we need you to get on board. And don't make us don't make us force you, but we need you to get on board. I think an Italy, a Spain, I think there's a bunch of countries that peel off immediately and just say, okay, we're in, right? At that point, how long can France and Britain hold out? Once countries start falling off, if some kind of deal's made, they already got nothing. They're doing a lot of talk, but I think they drop quick. If the pressure is on them, we got a deal and we expect you to go along with it, or else you're going to have a fight on your hands. I don't think they're really going to fight, Scott.
Yeah, two things. One, I think Europe has reached it because they just had this interesting meeting, their security meeting. And one of the things that came out of it is there's a recognition in Europe that America's leaving NATO, and it's accepted. They want America to gradually withdraw from NATO in a controlled manner over a period of 5 to 10 years. That's the way they can move forward. They don't want America to unilaterally withdraw, which Trump can do at any moment. So that's the leverage, because the United States will say, look, sign on to this thing and we're going to stay here. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to help you get to where you need to be before we disentangle ourselves. And I think at the end of the day, that's our trump card, and we own them. Because if we pull out unilaterally, the whole thing collapses. They simply can't. I've tried to explain to people that 800 billion euro is nothing.
And they don't have it.
First of all, they're going to have to borrow it. And look, we've seen this pattern with the Germans. The Germans borrowed 100 billion euro to rebuild the German military. Immediately, they had to begin their payment schedule. Now, here's the interesting thing about rebuilding the military. It's not as though you go to Walmart. It's not like you're getting a credit card and you go to Walmart and you go, I'll take this, I'll take this, I'll take this, I'll take. Guys, I'm giving away the fact that I'm a Walmart guy. I know I should be going to more high-end stores, but give me more subscribers and we'll do that until I'm a Walmart guy. But that's not how it works. What it does is we need to buy this. So there's lead time. So now they have to invest. They have to put in the orders. It's lead time. And that lead time stretches out months, if not years. And while that lead time's going out and you're making the slow payments, the bank's going 14% interest. You owe me, cha-ching, payment. So immediately 100 billion, 80 billion, 20 billion's gone in payments. Oh, you drag that contract out, 60 billion gone in payments. Next thing you know, they're down to 45 billion out of the 100 billion for procurement, and they haven't bought anything yet, and they're out. Last year, the German defense ministry, after this 100 billion thing, the spending spree, went to the German parliament and said, we need you to give us, I forget what the percentage was, 7.6% increase in our budget or something like that. And the parliament, now you get 1.8. Inflation's 2.5, which means the German military that's supposed to be rebuilding and expanding had to shrink because they don't have enough money. This is what's going to happen to that 800 billion. They're going to borrow it and immediately start procuring things that have 2030, 2040 lead times, meaning we're talking 5 years, 15 years down the road. That 800 billion, you ain't going to make the payments. Anybody who's done a home equity loan, you know what I'm talking about. You got the money, but now you got to pay the interest, and by your time you're done, whatever you borrowed, multiply it by 3, and that's it. So 800 billion quickly becomes 2.4 trillion, and you haven't done anything. That's what's going to happen, and Europe knows that. They can't afford this. It's a disaster. Then there's the other reality. They're all talking big. I mean, I haven't heard so much smack talk since, somebody was, listen to some of these, ultimate, what are the cage fighting?
UFC guys and stuff.
Yeah. So you got, Europe's just suddenly become a bunch of UFC people. You got people who are dressed in skirts and dresses, looking pretty dainty, speaking like they're UFC fighters. I would advise them to just start watching the debriefings, because more and more, and Andrei, I know you do this because you speak Russian. You watch the Telegram channels, the fantastic briefings. For instance, they did one of I think it was 7 wounded men from the pipeline operation.
I didn't get to it, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So you just listen to them, and it's fascinating. One, the courage and all that stuff. But I was listening as they were talking about, we had the water, we had to bring in our cartridges, our grenades, and our drones. No, what? Drones. Yeah, they brought drones with them, because as soon as they came out, the first thing they said, we stumbled out, we can't breathe, we're dying, and we had to start deploying our drones. And then they said the first contact with the enemy, they said the buzzers started showing up, the drones. And now they're in battle. And you think the battle is fighting the enemy in hand-to-hand combat. It's the drones, the FPV drones coming in. It's all drone warfare.
They'll carry shotguns now. Shotguns for
the drones. Shotguns, they carry shotguns.
Nets is a big deal.
My point is, every aspect of this operation was about drones. Ukrainian drones found the operation, called in artillery. That's how the Ukrainians responded. The Ukrainians can't get out because you're deploying drones. As soon as you deploy drones, everybody stops moving. Everybody goes down to the ground, and now it's a drone war, counter drone, jamming, FPV against FPV, find out where the enemy's operating their drones, put firepower in that, suppress the drones, move, drones back up, down. This is a whole new way of warfare that we have no clue about. Nobody in Europe understands how to do this. You can read about it, but unless you're doing it, and these guys, every single one of these soldiers on both sides, it's all drones.
Yeah.
It's all drones dominate everything. As you move, they're talking about, they've got 3 or 4 drones coming at them. And this is the Russians talking about the Ukrainians. The Russians are driving, they're going, yeah, we got 3 or 4 up at all times. I mean, that's just normal. As you get near the front, the drones are everywhere. You're looking for them, and they're wounding guys. They talk about as they move to contact. Now the drones, they're not killing a lot of guys, but a lot of, I guess they're, is it 300 is a wounded?
Yeah, 300 wounded. Yeah,
300. So we got a 300. We got a 300. Then evacuation's a big thing, and they're talking about how they do that. But it's all based upon drones, and the drones control the firepower. They control everything, the pace of movement, the whole thing. Europe has no clue whatsoever. Even the United States doesn't. I keep checking down at Quantico, and I would hope the Marine Corps has always been on the cutting edge of this kind of stuff, is building a drone battalion, and having them go out to 29 Palms and start doing this kind of drone war. And I'm talking about buy the cheapest damn drones, disposable drones, because that's what they're using right now. They're just putting them up, and they are flooding the zone. The Ukrainians are using thousands of drones a day. They print them. They literally have, I thought it was innovative. I remember that it was one of them, because I was an intelligence officer, and Andrei knows this. Maps are very important to us. And I remember I always had to have my as part of my deployment for each contingency, I had to have my maps. And maps weigh a lot, they're paper. And so I'm moving around with my maps. And then one day they said, Scott, you don't have to pack the maps anymore. Just have the one on you. We're deploying a printer. What? Yeah, we're deploying a printer, and we're going to print maps. I'm like, no, you can print maps in combat. We're going to print maps in combat. All right. Now they don't even use maps anymore. I mean, they do, but it's all done on, computer screen or whatever.
Yeah,
but the drones, the Ukrainians have 3D printers that are deployed together with the drone unit in a rear area, sir, and I'm talking about near the front line, and they're printing drones and assembling the drones there in mass production. And so they print them out every day, and they just hand them off to the guys, and then they load them up with the explosive, and they take them off, and they get shot down. They put another one up there. These aren't like, you and I having a drone that we spent, whatever. I don't have a drone, but you have a drone. Yeah, I mean, to me, if I had a drone like that and it crashed, that'd be the end of it. That my wife would never let me have another drone, because whatever money I spend is enough. But they're out there just throwing away, because they're literally rounds of ammunition. They're just throwing them out there, rounds of ammunition, boom, boom, boom. And this is why none of this talk matters, because Europe can't put anything on the battlefield that can survive. They have no clue how to do it. This is a completely different kind of war. It's not anything the Europeans are training for. They're not prepared for it. So even if they could muster forces of sufficient size and quantity and sustainability to get to the battlefield, they'll be dead, because they simply can't operate. They don't know what it means to fight in a drone environment. The Russians have. And I've talked to you about this, Andrei, before. You're going to beat me to the punch because you speak better Russian. But the point is, I need to get contact in the Russian Academy system, because I want to find out, how, just out of curiosity, how they bring the lessons of the battlefield to the academies.
Yeah.
And then write the doctrine and get it out there. And if they learn a lesson within a week, their field training academies have received guidance from the major academies on how to retrain people. I'm like, that's wild. That's great. We need to learn how to do that. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, there is an open source of the incredible value, but United States military has it. It's just that it doesn't internalize it. And it's, of course, famous thing, which I'm drawing a lot of my knowledge. I keep up with this because I have to. It's a Военная мысль, Military Thought magazine. It is one of the best operational strategic magazines in the world, if not the best. And so you can get it this way. But in terms of, we have common, friends with you, and you know who they are. So they can obviously explain, but I don't think so Russians will be ready to divulge most of the details. But overall tactical picture, they can certainly discuss, and they will discuss. And that's why where they're not even Военный Вестник, Military Digest, it is the officer and generals and admirals, that's how it sounds. Publication of the Russian Defense Ministry. It is for the officers and admirals and generals of the Russian Defense Ministry. It's military thought. It gives outstanding scientific and combat experience narrations, obviously correctly taking away what is not supposed to be divulged, and especially their combat statistics, which is, oh my gosh, it's valuable tremendously. So, but they give this, and it's an excellent publication. I can send you a number of, I have issues, they are Russian, obviously. Remarkably, even in Военная мысль, in military thought, they give summary for each article in English. It's summary. It's not, article itself is in Russian, but summary is given in English. That means what? They know that CIA, Pentagon, and other people read it. So why don't we explain the, basically the summary, since it's in the open, it's open source Intel, and they essentially, and it's valuable, it's wonderful. And it explains, especially not just on the ground tactical level, but what is most importantly, where the victories are attained, operational and strategic level. Because you not attain victory on the tactical. You can lose their company, in the firefight, but then you suddenly win operationally, and your brigade moves like 20 kilometers and bang, like this. The guys who went into the pipes, we'll look at about the battalion size forces, actually. So guess what? They achieved strategic success. Well, because they're completely demoralized and, just caught them by surprise. And after that, the Russians rolled in, and that was it, So, and that's how it's important. So I'm going to give you that and ask, who. You're probably going to be talking to him. The guy, our common friend. He might get you also some insights and maybe, give some contacts, and people, because I know many people who are behind. I know who they are, but I cannot divulge their personalities. Yeah, they are my sources in the sense.
I just want to say thank you, Andrei, because the FBI is watching us tonight.
Yeah, I know. So yeah. Yeah. Well, guess what? FSB also watches us. Okay? So SVR. Let me tell you, SVR definitely watches us. I can tell you that. I can tell you more. Even the people in the Defense Ministry of the Foreign Affairs watch us, especially people who are dealing on this, shady area. So I know this for a fact. So yeah, open source Intel, absolutely, no doubt. It's
Well, I'll say this.
What was interesting is you remember the summer, the famous summer counteroffensive that the Ukrainians
were Lord Jesus.
The Russians pulled I think it was Major General Romanchuk out of he was deputy commander of 58th Army or something like that. Mm-hmm. Sent him to the academy to rewrite Russian defensive doctrine.
Yeah.
And then they published his findings in open sources, and exactly what you're talking about. And then they sent him to the Robotyno front, where he implemented it and kicked the living crap out of the Ukrainians. And I'm sitting there going, but they told you what they're going to do, and yet you put them. I don't. But you're right. The open source, because that's where I saw it. That's where he published this fantastic article in one of those journals that and then you read the article and you take a look at how they implemented it there, and it was textbook perfect.
Yeah, that's how you do. You go adapt, rewrite, go back, and of course there is a strategic link, so to speak, things, especially in R&D, and new weapons come online.
Right.
You have some, and then suddenly you have a Reshnik.
But he was pulled out in the fall of 2022.
Oh, yeah.
And he had his article written by spring 2023 and had his defenses built by early June.
The Russians, began to withdraw from Kherson. From Kherson. Surovikin began to withdraw from Kherson about that time, autumn, closer to winter. And there were, of course, as you might expect, all kinds of what's called military bloggers, Russian military bloggers. None of them has anything to do with military. Most of them, they're shysters, they're gathering donations. But strategically, it was absolutely clear that something was afoot. They built what we'll call Surovikin. Well, it's Stavitsky line, actually. Surovikin merely presented strategic thing. These were engineering troops by Stavitsky who created this line. And they never even get before the everything was stopped in the security zone. They didn't even get to the first line of defense. They were just absolutely demolished there. 160,000.
Well, guys, just it's something as simple as this. I'm watching Patrick Lancaster, and he's getting in, riding around with guys in trucks and stuff. Okay, and I saw, I'm watching it a while back, and there's some drones, and they're firing them with their rifles. I'm looking now, every one of those trucks, they got guys hanging out with shotguns, and they're like, nope, we use number 1 or number 2. So now, like, you never saw shotguns. And with some guys saying, yes, our grandfathers made these during World War II. Our grandfathers made these and they work for us. And every vehicle had 1 or 2 guys with shotguns, and they're just hanging out the window. And he's like, oh yeah, you get a nice spread. And I thought, that's pretty simple. It's like shooting birds. You know what I mean? You got a shotgun.
It is a bird. It is a bird. It's essentially a bird, but artificial, and that's how you do it. So
yeah, something as simple as that. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Okay, don't forget, everybody. Scott Ritter.
Yeah, check your emails. Check your emails, guys.
Okay, I will. ScottRitter.com. That's Scott Ritter's website. You can find him there. Where else can I find you, Scott?
Well, I mean, if you go to ScottRitter.com, all roads lead to ScottRitter.com, and I don't want to waste too much time, so that would be it. But that's where you'll get my Substack. That's where you'll get the Russia House and all the other things.
And as far as Andrei, you've got Reminiscence of the Future and his Smoothie X12 podcast here on YouTube. And that's, as I said, it's great. I never miss a show. He's got a lot of good stuff on there, so make sure you check it out. Usually about 30 minutes. They're fairly brief, as according to my 1 hour ones, but they're densely packed with information. Thanks a lot, guys. Everybody, make sure you follow me on Rumble. Make sure you follow me on Rockfin. As I said, for some reason, the last one we did lasted 5 hours, and they cut it off. So who knows? We'll see how long this one lasts. But if this one's gone for any reason, gang, you can find it on Rumble just as easy. Thanks a lot, guys, and look forward to talking to you again soon. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye-bye.
And also, don't forget this. Scott and Andrei both, they've got Substack, they got Patreon, stuff like that. So you can go there to donate. And of course, you see everything going by here. Buy me a coffee, Cash App, PayPal, Patreon, things of that nature. If you can afford to donate, please donate. Even if you can't, don't worry about it. Just share it on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot. I'm out.